Hey, and good night. This is Tiger. Welcome to my stream. A bit late we are, but we have AJ back. And since I have all my DLCs that I owned before, the game is not that fast in loading as it was during the early access period. Welcome to the first regular stream in the Train Sim World 5 era, and this takes us back to the West Coast main line, where we want to talk about the TASS system, the Tilt Authority and Speed Supervision system. Thanks to Ravenslofty for giving me this idea, and I did some digging and researching so that I actually can say a few words about it. And yeah, funny enough, by chance I was to get a Euro balise in my hand this afternoon, so I actually can contribute a picture of this firsthand, so to say. How did I want to approach this? I wanted to start with one scenario that allows us to cold start this train. The refreshing refurb scenario, where we start our train at the Wembley Depot, and where we go through the self-test of the TASS part, the tilting self-test and the speed supervision self-test, with a lot of alarms and lights beeping going on and off. Obviously, you know that if you played the introduction to the Pendolino train, or this scenario, obviously. But since we don't see that much from the TASS system, I thought this is the best way to approach it. Good morning, driver. Welcome to the Intercity Depot at Wembley. These Class 390s in front of you have been just refurbished. Today you have the honor of driving the first refurbished train from Euston before driving up to Watford to meet another refurbished train on its way to London. So those trains have been refurbished from being 390/0 trains with 9 cars to 390/1 trains with 11 cars. So we have crew lockers here that don't work, but they look nice. And this is our cab. It says sit in the driver's seat. Spectre! Hey, Tiger and AJ, good evening. So nice to have you on the stream. And a very good evening to you. So what do I do here on this panel? Vigilance is isolated. The DST is isolated, and I don't want this isolated. The AWS is isolated, and very tricky, the AWS is also switched off on the mini circuit breaker. Press and hold the train auxiliaries set button for 5 seconds. This is that one here. If you turn off the objective markers, as I like to do it, this is sometimes a bit hard to find. Now we have connected more or less our battery with the electronics that raise the pantograph. We have no pantograph up yet. What you can easily see if you look along the train, we have 2 pantographs typically, one at the front and one at the end of the train. And we are now on those trains using the front pantograph typically. You can also see that in this screen here. train management system. So many things work. Also, you have 8 on the 8 and 8 on the 9 again. But you can see if the pantograph is up or down and the vacuum circuit breakers are open or closed, along with some other things that I don't think can actually change, but the pantograph behavior you can actually see on this screen. Set the reverser to neutral. Maybe they changed this on the old trains. And now you hear a lot of ruckus going on. I cancelled the AWS alarm for the self-test. What is still going on is the tilting self-test here. Here the tilt alarm going off. The red lights are lit steadily. The yellow ones are flashing. We just keep it going for a bit. CD radar! Próxima fermada. Now he's talking Spanish. Get the pantograph up. Still we're not getting any pantograph. But it says up, it's on the C car where the pantograph should be up. Maybe we just don't see it yet. It says it's up. Ah, here. It actually took the one at the back of the train. And it is closed, the vacuum circuit breaker, so that we have enough juice. And then put it to forward. That actually sounded like a vacuum circuit breaker. Then the acknowledge button one time for the tilting apparatus. And then we have to wait for a second tilt alarm accompanied by the lights going off. And then you have to cancel it here and then with the intervention reset button. And then also the tilt not available light comes off. That was the self-test for the tilting system and for the whole TASS system. The train is set and ready to go. Proceed to Euston Station. I think we are limited to 15 here. We are already set to forward. We have our lights on. Wipers we don't need. That means... Do we have a thing to contact the signaler? Wow, you are so excited of me, of course. I am excited of you and of Spectre. I love my old friends. Also, I'm excited to tell you that this afternoon I actually got to visit a live signal box where they were actually doing the signaling. That was a very interesting thing to see. And it reminded me a lot of the Simrail signaling boxes, to be honest. So, that sounds extremely nice. A modern one or an old school? Well, halfway. It was not a mechanical one with levers, but and not an electronic one. It was one from the 60s, 70s with those almost really big electronic relays in glass boxes. They had monitors, but they had also this big wall where you can see all the lines and the lights on the lines if they are occupied or not, and you can see the signal aspects and stuff, and the train numbers are lighting up. Exit signal is still red, as you can see. Semaphore signal. Now they are giving us a green. We can leave. The yard. Or the depot. I like that they now actually go quite a lot of cars on their motorways. It does not look anymore like zombie apocalypse. What is wrong now? Did I forgot to activate anything? Why does the safety systems isolated light up? Why am I only getting 35 points? Interesting. We have to investigate. Inspector says 2 members of my family used to work in signal boxes. Haha! As a little title was hanging around there from time to time. Not sure if that was 100% legal, but it should be time barred now anyway. Yeah, that is interesting. So I cannot really impress you with my first-hand knowledge of a real-life signaling box, but that is cool. Can anyone tell me why my safety systems are allegedly not activated? Vigilance is normal, DSD is normal, AWS is normal, and I turned on the AWS fuse. Was it like this the last time I played this? I don't know. We're going into the up south, up slow line, US. And then I have to recheck my safety systems. What the train thinks, or why the train thinks that my safety systems are isolated. They did fix a GNT, but some PCB seems to be still wrong as a CD radar. Well, it has something to do with the sequence of activating it, right? Some of it is still weird there. Maybe it is one of the things here too, because I activated it before setting the reverser. Maybe that's the same problem here with the tilting ICE. Well, we'll have to change caps in Euston anyway. So at any rate, the AWS alarm went off. Can't really say why it went off. Maybe the signal was still yellow when we ran across the switch. It's really a long train with the 11 cars. Now across a 30 switch, if I see that correctly. And then we can speed up with still more 30 switches, but should be okay to accelerate to 30 now. Maybe close the fuse first. I will try. Just use key shorts. On and off. Now it worked. Alright. On and off. It's the same quick fix that you get from your help desk or from your telephone provider. On off, that's the trick. $90, if I read it correctly, towards Euston. And as you can see, we are actually already in a speed supervised part. We're already running on TASS speed supervision. Yeah, you're right, Spectre. Help desk is plugged in first. And one niggle about the route is that you don't see the balises for the TASS system in the track. There should be Euro balises running the system, and they are just not there. You see the AWS magnets. You see the TPWS grids. Sometimes you spot something yellow. And here the speed supervision ended. The limit is down to 80. And we will just discuss it later. This is a weird thing of the system. If it is actually working as it is implemented in the game, that you don't really get an end procedure. You just drop out and are expected to be at the reduced speed again. And CD Radar says if I try to switch off the safety systems during running the train, yeah, I think here is the reduction to 50. At the same time announced a further reduction. Now the reduction to 55 and an announced a reduction to 50. The train would stop immediately. I didn't do that here with the DSD and the vigilance device. But I have seen that too, that the train would stop immediately after you turn on and off, or the other way around, off and on the safety systems. Did you see how the tunnel exit all of a sudden vanished? Bloop. That is weird. So this is probably my favorite part. With those two lines merging with the other two lines coming from below. I think we will be getting a reduction to 40 soonish. Spectre says tunnel seemed to be a big challenge. I had an almost religious experience on Southeastern High Speed and Schnellfahrstrecke Köln-Würzburg. In tunnels I saw the light. Oh no tunnels, please, says CD Radar. Well, tunnels actually seem to prove difficult every time. A. That means we are on the leftmost track. Here is the reduction to 40. And there will soon be a reduction to 25, I think. Here's the last signal before London Euston. We are on line A. And are routed to platform number 4, it says. The signal. The Suma is still a better train. So you prefer the Japanese over the French? Yeah, I guess it is a much newer train too, right? The Asuma A train versus... No, actually it's not a French train, right? It's an Italian-built train? Probably. Only the safety system is Alstom, not the whole train. What I find weird on this train is that you can see the effort that the e-brake is providing here with this digit, but you cannot see the tractive effort that your train is doing. Now we have this unsupervised, and at least unsupervised by the game, reduction to 15 when we go to the platform. I think the TPWS system is controlling it when you're running up to the buffer block. The Renault of trains. No, I said this incorrectly. This is not a French train. Even though the French build great trains, don't they? With the TGVs. But Avanti West Coast is partly run by the Italian state railways, no? Trenitalia, 30% Trenitalia. And the Pendolino. I did not actually check this out, but I would have thought it's an Italian-built train. Not only because of the name. And CD Radar keeps his Skoda. Alright. Well, I would love to see a Baureihe 102. In the game. That is a Skoda. But from what you can hear, they are not so super happy about the Skoda locomotives. Because they are so often kaput. There's a well-known railway journalist who wants to get a picture of you with a new train. Shut down the cab and speak to them first because preparing the train for before preparing the train for departure. This is this guy here. Interestingly, you put the power handle not into the maximum brake position but into the off position. And this train has a hill start, as you can see. And it has a working snow brake. I checked this out later. So, what does he want? Reverse it to off. The exterior lighted tail, we can do this. Pan down, can do this too. And remove the master key. We can leave the safety systems on, I think. But what I always like to do when changing cabs, set the DRA. And then exit the train. And pamper the journalist. You call it the 380. Yeah. Let me just line this up perfect. Now look at the camera and say cheese. I don't say cheese. And it does not change a thing. And it is the only new loco that will not get ETCS, so bye-bye next year. So the Skoda is not getting ETCS. That is harsh. Train number VT. Does anyone know? That is an interesting thing. Those train numbers here always start with VT for, if I'm not mistaken, Virgin trains, who were the railway carrier to run this line with those trains before Avanti West Coast got the tender. So did they just keep the VT? Oh, you see an off indicator we can see there, but we don't get a right away indicator that are there in real life. Did they just keep the shortcut even though the company changed? Virgin trains, yeah. They kept the numbers. A good thing to know. And Jeffrey, is that a reference to Geoff Marshall? Maybe. I don't even know Geoff Marshall. Is he a well-known train journalist? So, if you want to operate this panel, it's always nice to sit in the second man seat. And then the AWS fuse. Oh. Not enough room for the key to turn. See if we get the same problem again. Insert the master key. Set the reverser to neutral. Wait for the second tilting alarm. We can already set the lights. And now pan up. Press the stuff and then pan up if you want. Or allow passengers to board and head straight to Watford to meet the second train. If timed right, both you and the other train should arrive at the same time, making a great photo opportunity. Alright, doors. He's not a journalist. Well, what do I know? And again, safety systems isolated. Let's see if the trick does work again. Maybe it vanishes if I get the reverser to neutral later. But before we get there, the first part of the presentation. The TASS system, the tilt authority and speed supervision system. So what did I find in sources? You can see it on the left side of my screen. There are 3 rail industry standards where you can find information about how this TASS system for tilting trains is supposed to be built and what the driver is supposed to see and so on. Especially the first one has 2 documents that give you a lot of information about this. And then I dug up an old manual Virgin trains from 2005 that described the class 390 before the refurbishment. So some changes must have been done there, and especially one thing they say, they tell you that you should never move the reverser from forward to neutral, because then you will have to restart the TASS system, and that you should always use the other pantograph, not the front one like we do, not the rear one as we do, but the front one for whatever reason. Yeah, so if you want to read up stuff. Nevertheless, I tried to build some information out of what I found in those standards and in this manual. And we will always be talking about 2 things when we're talking about tilting trains. One is the tilting mechanism, like the NITEC in the German trains that actually tilt the train, and they need to know, or this system needs to know when to tilt the train and when it makes sense to tilt the train and how much and so on. And then it is accompanied by a speed supervision system that does not necessarily require the train to tilt, but it often goes hand in hand, like the NITEC and the GNT in Germany, or like here the tilting and the TASS speed supervision. And what do we have on the train to facilitate all this? So this is my track, looking at it from the side, and this is my class 390. It looks a bit like, I said, hippopotamus, but nevertheless, this is supposed to be the power car, or the first car in the 390 train, with the axles, with this nose that is going close to the tracks at the front. And then we have the rest of the train here, just pars pro toto, this part of the first car in the end. And then we have a pantograph, not on this car, but obviously it is just representing the pantograph that comes somewhere. We have a computer on each vehicle, and the computer on the end vehicles with the driving caps, they also act as the train tilting processors. And then every vehicle has its vehicle tilting processor. So on the driving ends, in the end cars with the driving caps, you have a computer that does both, that processes the tilting information and then also the control operations that you need to operate every vehicle and what every vehicle needs to do in a tilting train. So every vehicle has its own vehicle tilting processor. Those are connected, and the tilting processor is fed with information that comes in from a balise antenna, and the information is picked up by Euro balises. We have seen those balises quite a lot, the same ones that I used for the ETCS information, the same ones that I used for GNT, the same ones that I used for Euro Signum and Eurozub in Switzerland, for example, or for the even for the Siemens train guard, the ZSI 127 that you would have on the modern version of the Bernina linear. So used quite a lot for different systems, also for that one here. So, and those are not only sold by one company, but you can find Eurobalises built by Siemens, Eurobalises built by Alstom, and so on. So this is an open standard, obviously, so that everyone who wants to sell those thingies can sell them. They look like this in the game, But this screenshot is taken on a different route, because what is very sad, we don't have those balises in the West Coast main line. At least I have not spotted a single one, so you don't really know how they are supposed to work, and this points towards that this system is not really simulated that accurately, so that it does not really work with existing balises. So you can just wonder how the implementation is done actually. And funny enough, this afternoon I have one of those thingies actually in my own hand, and so I needed to take a picture and put this in the presentation so that you can see how big those thingies actually are. They are quite lightweight. I think they are mostly made up of plastic. And yeah, on this one you can actually see that's a Siemens one, a fixed data balise, this one, not one where you can infill information. Underneath, for comparison, you can see a PZB magnet, a combined magnet 1000 and 2000 Hertz for a Mehrabschnittssignal, for example. And those are those thingies that should be there in the game on the line, but they are not, unfortunately, for whatever reason. They just thought they don't need to put them there. And this is what gives the train the information. Then another piece that picks up information for the train is a sensor unit that does a thing that nowadays almost every smartphone can do. It actually has some gyroscopic sensors and some acceleration sensors that can sensor how much the train is tilting, how much it is accelerating, and it does some odometry so that the train knows how far it traveled since the last balise, how much it is actually tilting, and the acceleration of different parts in the train. So this is the data input that the train tilting processor gets, and then it calculates how much the train is supposed to tilt, and then it sends the information to the tilting processors in every vehicle, and they control devices that are called driver units. And those driver units actually called more or less electric motors that are called actuators, servo motors, and so much. Those servo motors actually they control the tilting mechanism in the train and tilt the train, and they don't do it not only on the bogies, but also for the pantograph, the tilting pantograph that CD Radar talked about last week. That is more or less the setup in the train. The tilting mechanism itself can best be looked at if you look at it at the front, or from the front. This is your track, this is your axle sitting there, and this is more or less the train hull. And you have a rigid bogie frame or truck frame where the axles run in, and they don't tilt, they are just running on the tracks as they normally do. And then you have a contraption of the train that is a bit like a trapezoid, a swinging bogie bolster that is connected with the car body bolster where the coach is more or less fixed to. In between you have the secondary suspension, so that there is a bit of suspension between the car and the axle. And then the most interesting part, you have tilt roller bearings between the swinging bogie bolster and the rigid bogie frame, and those enable the train to tilt by rolling on those roller bearings, so it allows the train to move in that direction. And if I got my animation correctly, it looks a bit like this, and so the train can tilt on or in the bogie by means of those roller bearings. And then there are some things that are called hold-off devices that I think they are fixed to the outside of the bogies, and they dampen the lateral movement of the coach versus the bogies, but they are not in this diagram here. So that is more or less the technical stuff that we need for having this train tilt, as I got it out of this driver's manual from 2005. maybe there have been some modernizations or refurbishments in this system, but in essence, I think it is still the same that you had there. So now let's look at the track. We have looked at the train-borne equipment. Let's look at the track. This is our track, and typically you have speed limits signed, as we all know this, with 90, 110, 705, and speed reductions can be announced with morpeth boards, or as they are called officially, PSWIs, permitted speed warning indicators. And if we want to introduce a part where the train can tilt and go faster in between that, then we always need to start with 2 balises, because the tilting mechanism does not start until the train has successfully read 2 successive balises. And so at the beginning of a part, they are typically put quite close together so that the train can read 2 of them in succession successfully, and then start with the program. In the game, it more or less starts when you pass the first sign for the enhanced permissible speeds, and then every couple of miles there will be a new balise. From what I've read, in this system you only get 1 balise, not a pair, like in ETCS, so that we can have the situation then that if the train cannot read 1 balise, then the tilting system can be switched off for security reasons until the train has read 2 balises in succession successfully again, to turn the tilting system again. Unlike the ETCS, where we have heard that we have always a pair of balises, so that the train can at least know that he should have read a balise, but one of them wasn't there. We have already looked at the signage that comes with the enhanced speed profile, and the tilting. Obviously, we do all the efforts so that our tilting trains can go faster than non-tilting trains. That means we have at least 2 speed profiles in the sections in question, can be even more. 1 normal permissible speed profile, and then the enhanced, I think I did it the wrong way around. It is EPS, not ESP. Enhanced permissible speed. So sorry for that. Maybe I just fix it. This is super annoying. Enhanced permissible speed. So why not just remove the cover a bit and look into the clockwork. Enhanced permissible speed. Leseansicht and everything. Go back to where we were. Yes. Enhanced permissible speed for the tilting trains with the enhanced permissible speed profile. The signs are supposed to be different in color and different in shape. This is why they have those more or less rectangular background shape and the yellow color in the middle, because white or black was already taken for the kilometer per hour signs. So now we have black on yellow with a red border and on a white square that give us the relevant speed limits if we are in tilting mode. You can have warning indicators for that, like EPS morpeths. They look like this according to the rules, all yellow, and also indicating this. I have not spotted one of them in the game, unfortunately, but from what I've seen in cap view videos, they are not there in real life either. So this is not the problem of the implementation, but a thing that you look for unsuccessfully in real life as well. Sometimes you happen to get this sign, may it be with EPS or not, with 2 figures, and obviously we don't have the distinction between passengers and freight trains because there are no tilting freight trains anymore. I think they had some tilting freight trains, or they experimented with trains of that kind a couple of years ago, but this did not go anywhere as far as I remember. So why do we have a split profile here on the enhanced permissible speed? Because we can have different tilting trains, and the class 221, the Super Voyager trains, they can have a lower speed profile than the Pendolino trains, the 390 trains. So if you see a split speed reading on the yellow enhanced permissible speed boards, then the higher one is for the 390 trains and the lower one is for the Super Voyager trains. What do the balises tell the train? What are the information that we can, or what is the information that we can get from the balises? The most basic one is it tells you what balise it is. Hello, I'm balise number so and so, and the next balise will be in 4.73 miles. So that the train knows where to expect the next balise, so that the train knows whether it read the next balise successfully or not. Then it gives you the regular speed profile, what is quite interesting, because you could come to the idea that the TASS system only controls the enhanced permissible speed profile for the tilting trains. It is not so. It can also control the regular speed profile. What sometimes happens, because you have passages where you don't tilt in between, and the system can still supervise your speed here. But obviously also the enhanced permissible speed is in it, and then it already gives the train information about the brake curve for speed reductions, so that the train at any point knows where, at what speed it is still okay to travel, so that the train can make the speed reduction in time. Also, and this is why it is called a tilt authority and speed supervision system, it tells the train at what parts of the track it is allowed to tilt and where it is not allowed to tilt. Because sometimes you can have parts where tilting is not advisable, because what obviously the most annoying thing with a tilting train is if it tilts into some part of the railway infrastructure, be it a tunnel wall or a bridge pillar or whatever, a mast. So that at some points, if you have a tunnel, for example, in this in this section of track, then it is not allowed to tilt there. So the train may not tilt there, and the information for that it gets from the balises, so then the train would not tilt in this part of the track. Then it also gets a gradient profile from what I have read, and TPWS information. What do we need the TPWS information for? Well, just imagine we have an overspeed sensor loop somewhere here where we check regular trains whether they are actually slowing down properly from the 110 to the 75. Then at this point they would check it for whatever speed, and if those overspeed sensor loops are on our tilting train, then we get stopped for nothing, because we're actually supposed to go, or allowed to go, much faster. So this information needs to suppress the system in the TPWS system that reacts to those overspeed sensor loops, for example. Yeah, this is probably not an exhaustive list, but all all this information should be transferred by the balises to the train, so that the train can run safely on enhanced speed with the tilting technology, without tilting into walls, without going too fast, and so on. What do we have in our cap for that? I just took some screenshots. We have this part underneath our windscreen, a little bit lower this section, that is captioned with TASS, and those are the main parts, and they can be divided into this part that deals mainly with the tilting system, and the other part that deals mainly with the speed supervision system. And on the left side we have some more stuff that is connected a bit with it, and we have the fuse board with all the with all the isolation switches here. And the first thing that you find, if you look a bit closer on the right side, you find a thing that is here, the one where you can punch in a key that is labeled tilt test enable, and you would like, oh, it's like the 622 on, or is it the 612? I don't know. The tilting train from Taranta Rampe, where you can actually do a tilting test, and I want to do a tilting test on my train here. Yeah, but this is from what you can read in this manual, actually nothing that the driver can do. This is something that the maintenance guys do, and it states in the manual that if you are a driver and go in and find a key here in this lock, then you should just not start the train, because the tilting test is obviously not supposed to be done by the drivers. On the bottom left you find a permanent tilt isolation switch, so in one of the scenarios it is actually used, you can turn off the tilting thing entirely with this switch if for whatever reason you don't need it, or it is malfunctioning or whatever. You have also a temporary tilt isolation switch. This is here, and that is for operative uses wherever you need to switch off your tilting capability. If something is wrong, sometimes you need to switch it off. Also for certain assist procedures, when you're using your train to rescue a failed train in the block, then you sometimes need to turn it off, obviously, because then tilting makes no sense. And things like this, you can just switch it off, and then the tilt not available light will light up, and you can turn it back to normal if you want to go back to normal. Yeah, this is where the tilt unavailable light, tilt not available. So it's lights off if it is not available. So you don't have a light that is lit if it is available, but the other way around. What is different on the Super Voyager trains, they have a tilt available light, and this called for an exceptional permit to run those trains, because one of the provisions in those standards is that the things in the caps should be of the same kind, so that drivers don't get confused. And in those exceptional permits you can find an interesting sentence about the segregations of driver populations. What means, obviously, if there are no drivers that are driving both trains, then it is okay that they have a bit of a different layout. Interesting things. And CD Radar says tilt, 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 tilt. Yeah, it's all about tilt. Tilt alarm acknowledge. This is the button that we have to press if the tilt system is giving us an alarm, and we're getting this alarm during the self-test. We have seen that, and then typically not during operation unless something goes wrong. So this is not like a PCB alarm or some alarm that you get from the running system, but only if something goes wrong you get the alarm that you have to cancel with this acknowledge button here. And for telling you what actually is going wrong with your tilt systems, you have those 3 red and 3 yellow buttons. One is the tilt available button. We have already looked at it. It lights up if the tilt is not available, but can sometimes happen for different reasons. And speed reduction, what I thought in the beginning that it warns you about an incoming speed reduction or something. No, this is something that the tilt system is slowing down the speed if it finds some fault in the running gear, a hot box or an instability in a bogie or so. Then the system can slow down the speed autonomously, and it will show you, and then you have to react and have it checked or something like this. Pan tilt fault. That means if that is lit up all the time, then your panto is at the wrong angle for whatever reason. So the tilting mechanism for the pantograph does not work properly, and it gets stuck in a weird position. And at the same time, it is also, or should be, lit when the panto is rising. I have not witnessed this in the game. Maybe this got cancelled after a refurbishment, but within this manual it tells you that this light should also light up when the panto is rising. If the panto is lowering, then this red lamp should light up, and if it stays on, then the panto got stuck on its way down. It is not getting into its housing. Pan not housed. That would be that, according to the manual from 2005. Brake fault means that the brakes are not releasing properly, or that an axle is locked, and this also results in the system not running on full speed. Vehicle overload is a very interesting button, so I was not sure what this is about. There are obviously certain cars that cannot be too heavy for the tilting working properly. In the 9-car trains, it is the 3 cars before the last vehicle in the car, the ones that house the shops, and if they are loaded for more than 170% of their capacity, then this light lights up and you can't tilt. So if you have 2 or 3 rugby teams going home from London and they are all sitting there, inspector says if they have eaten too much fast food. Yeah, just let's do the example with the rugby team. It works as well, but you're right, if they have eaten too much fast food over time, it's the same problem. And if they are all in those vehicles, then this manual says you should send your guard to ask the rugby players politely to send all their props and locks into the next car, so that those key cars are not overloaded anymore. If those are the same cars on the 11-car train, I don't know. I don't have a manual for that. And why it is exactly those 3 cars that can't be overloaded. Because if other cars are overloaded, the tilting still works. It's only those 3 cars. Good luck to the guards, inspector. Yes, this is why I said you should ask politely. The sander here lights up if you go wheel slips, and you can push it to throw sand, so it does not really have to do anything in particular with the tilting system. On the TASS display, this little one with the light in the middle tells you that the system is operational. It is always talking about the system's health, where it's quite interesting. Would be the corresponding indicators on the GNT system. You have also a light that just tells you the system is there. It has not gotten any feed, but it is working properly. It can flash in the game. I don't know if it can flash. In reality, it can flash. Then something is wrong with the system. Some channels are blocked or broken down or whatever. This is the speaker, and then this is the most important button or indicator of the whole system. Speed supervised. If it is off, the speed is not supervised. If it is lit, then the speed is active. The speed supervision is active, and this gives you the authority to run on the enhanced permissible speeds, the EPS profile. It is quite simple. If the indicator is lit, you can go by the yellow speed boards. If it is not lit, you have to go by the normal white speed boards. Interesting fact is that you can even go by the enhanced permissible speeds, even if the tilt not available lamp should be on, telling you that at the moment the train cannot tilt. The only important light is that one. So there can be speed supervision without tilt. That is not a problem. You can even run on the enhanced permissible speed profile without tilt. The system should know if that is possible or not. But there can never be tilting without speed supervision. The overload or overspeed indicator is perhaps the second important button in this thing. It can be off, it can be flashing, or it can be lit steadily. And we will get to this in a minute when we look at the system and how it is working in particular. It just warns you that you're actually exceeding the speed profile, a bit like the G indicator. Yeah, not the G indicator, the S indicator, I think, on the GNT system is the better. It's the better example for how it works. media expert. Media expert, because I had it flash on. Thank you very much. You can press it. Well, one thing that should not disturb you is that the TPWS lamp for faults and being isolated or disabled will light up as long as you are, or as soon as you are running under the TASS system. We have seen this on the slide before, that the TPWS is suppressed, and this is told to the driver by lighting up this fault light here. So this is totally okay. And then when running under TASS, we also should always have a healthy incident recorder, because then it will just record and register any intervention, for example, that the system does. And this is done properly, I think, in the game, because this incident recorder healthy light lights up as soon as we are running. So that was already what we have on the cap, and then there is one last slide looking at the speed profile again. 85, 90, 110, and then reduction to 90 be our normal speed profile, the enhanced speed profile starting here. Again, I have to fix it because I had just copy pasted the wrong stuff here. So just look away for a second. Enhanced permissible speed. Enhanced permissible speed. Like this, maybe. And let's go through the whole presentation in the Leseansicht. So now it is better. We have our enhanced permissible speed boards. Here the moped for it. This is at 1.0, 85, 90, 100 and 125. This is our line for our enhanced permissible speed. 85, then 90, 125 and then 100. So we would have to go a bit like this. Obviously here, because of the length of the train, we cannot accelerate at once. We need to pass this point with the whole train, and then we have to slow down to hug the lower line. At some point we should start our TASS system with 2 balises, and then in a couple of miles the next balise. So this is the point where the speed supervision starts, and this is the first part where we can have the train tilt. And it is a bit like what we already know from Access or from GNT. We have different steps of escalation, and here we have a supervision of plus 3.5 miles, says the driver's manual here. Sometimes you can find 3 miles. This is at least the first line. This is the warning line. If you exceed this, you will get the warning. And then the next step is plus 6. Here we will get an intervention by the train. And then they are doing brake curve control. And interesting enough, in the GNT, the brake curve ended before the point where the speed needs to be lowered according to the signage. And here, at least in the standard that is cited here, you can find a clause that says that the speed boards should be put in a position that, with tolerances and everything, it should be ensured that you don't get an unnecessary intervention. What calls for the signs actually being about before the point where the system would intervene. So the distance tolerance would be on the other side if that is actually done like it is stated in this standard. What would you get as indicators here? Obviously the healthy light for your system, and then the blue one is off at the beginning because here you don't have a speed supervision, and the red one is off as well because you don't get the warning and no intervention. And as soon as you pass the second balise, the system starts, and it does speed supervision now. So this is why the blue one is lit at this point, even if you are not yet in an enhanced permissible speed profile. And then it is controlling the regular speed profile, the permissible speed, like here 90 at this point, until you get to a point, and this is already told to the train by the first balise how far it needs to go until the speed profile changes. And at this point the train knows I can go 125. Whether, like the G&T system, the system also ensures that the train is not accelerating too fast, I don't know. From what I have tested in the game, this seems not to happen. So it seems to switch here already with the sign. There can be no question that you still have to be slower, or according to the old limit, as long as the train has not fully passed the signal. But it might be that you are not getting controlled in this phase. So if you're accelerating earlier, the system will probably not intervene at this point, but I'm not sure about this. I have not found a reliable source to see that. So, but what happens if you're actually going faster than this is the speed that you're supposed to travel at? If you, for example, just start accelerating here and go beyond the 125, you hit the first line here, the 3.5 miles per hour line, then the system will react by flashing the red button and give you an alarm, beep, a continuous tone from what I have heard. And what do you need to do? Not much. You just have to reduce your speed, and as soon as you are back underneath the speed limit, then the light will come off, or is, from what I have read, it is supposed to come off. In the game it will not come off, it will just stay lit steadily, and the alarm should go off at this point. And in the game I have pressed it a couple of times, but it did not go off again anymore. Maybe you have to do something more complicated, but I think it should just come off on its own again. If you don't react to that and just still accelerate more and more and hit the intervention line, then you will get your intervention. That means the red lamp will now be lit steadily. It will not flash, it will be lit steadily, and you get the brake intervention. And how hard the brake intervention is depends on the circumstances, from what I have read. So it will start with just applying the e-brakes, with applying a bit of the air brakes with it, or going into full emergency braking. Depends on how fast you're accelerating and where you are, probably. The interesting part is that it is not a brake intervention that will necessarily bring the train to a stop, because it will give back control to the driver. Like we have seen this in G&T or Access, for example. We don't necessarily need to stop the train if we are getting the train back in safe waters, meaning under the speed line. We have to wait for the speed to drop. We don't need to brake it because the train is doing it on its own. And as soon as we are back underneath our speed limit, then at least the manual says we have to firmly press the intervention button for 2 seconds, and then it should come off and give the control back to the driver. So much what I think I got from those standards and this driver's manual for the system. And now we can just test it, how it is working in the game actually, because that was my presentation for today. We still have to wait for our passengers to board. Can use that to look at the bogies a bit. Can see those trapezoid boards with this indentation where the roller bearings probably are put into. So this is where the train tilts on. Maybe those are those hold-off devices that should limit the lateral movement. Yeah. I guess this is what we can see here in the balise antenna. I don't think that we can see the balise antenna here. Oh, this thing probably does not really look like it. No, here's the balise antenna, see? Or is it the sensor pack? I'm not entirely sure. Let's close our doors. And getting the reverser to forward, you always get this interesting sound that sounds like a vacuum circuit breaker getting activated. Starting at 15. So, TASS is healthy. No speed. Supervision on. Incident recorder is healthy. TPWS system is working. It is not suppressed. So now going downhill to swap sides, starting at platform 4. Now going all the way over to the left. Probably can go to the 30. And here on top of the tunnel is the 50 marker. What this AWS alarm is for, I can't tell you. It would be interesting to know what ruined my FPS here so badly. Maybe actually the streaming takes away all the performance. So exiting the tunnel we should get an 80 limit. Still not TASS supervised. I think soonish we should get the first enhanced speed profile. Speed sign that allows us to go 100. Here. And all of a sudden, even with no balises on the track, the speed supervision light is on. Now we can actually go by the higher speed limit after we passed with the full train to 100. It's still 100. That's only for the diverging. $105. Again 105. And now let's just check what happens if we accelerate beyond our limit. Like now we are at 120. Needle is climbing towards the 110. At some point it will even increase to 125. So, provided the limit is still at 120, we're accelerating beyond the limit. You can see alarm and flashing. Now it stopped because we ran into the 120, but it actually looked like it was controlling us for the length of our train even after we passed the 120 sign. So maybe it is taking the train length into account anyway. Now we're getting an alarm without flashing. Now it is flashing. There was the vigilance. Now it's the alarm with the flashing. And soon enough it should come steady and apply brakes. Steady. Brakes are coming on. You can see it here, the white needle. And some of the bogies. We got it. And now it is getting us back. E-brake is on. Speedometer is falling. Click. Power handle is to 0 to release the traction lock. And then you can accelerate again. So that works. And we're actually getting closer to the end. This is already Harrow and Wealdstone. That means soon enough we will get to the end of, or we get into a gap around Watford Junction. We won't have speed supervision in this point. We can also see, if we isolate the tilt, this light is actually lighting up. The speed supervision is still active anyway. But what is a bit weird is we are running 125 here, supervised and everything. And then we are getting closer to, we can't see it here right now, to a drop to 110 and the end of the supervised air section. And we don't get any warning for that. So on 125. And now you can see it actually, the drop to 110. That is incoming, but there are no Morpeth boards or indicators of whatever kind to warn you. So this is a thing. If that is actually how it is in real life, it is up to the driver entirely. This station here is always the marker for me that I should start slowing down to 110. This is only for the diverging. And I think in front of this arched structure here, 110. And no speed supervision anymore. So Watford Junction. Inspector says, I think that in the UK only speed reductions of a certain percentage need to be signaled in advance. The rest is route knowledge. I find that interesting. Yeah, you're totally right. We have that in a lot of operating rules or planning rules. Also in Austria, only a certain percentage or absolute value calls for an announcement. But it is still interesting that this also works for the enhanced speed profile ending. So, there is actually a second train. I wonder if this is a scenario that can have two different outcomes. Because last time I played it, there was no train because I was too slow or too fast or whatever. This time there is a second train. Alarm. Sounds like an alarm, but it is just the traction of this 350 train. Perfect timing, both you and the other train arrived at the same time. So this is interesting. This scenario can have two different outcomes. Either no train or actually a different train. We'll be held here for a while, park the train, and let's see how you did today. So maybe we can actually have scenarios that develop into different directions. Power handle to off. Is it not off? Oh. Yes, that's it. Did you see I made the 2000 mark on my level, and it is almost still readable. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to celebrate today is a thing that you might probably already know because it has been showcased in a stream or the other. I did not watch those streams, so I just found it out on my own this afternoon, and going to the route in Free Roam. Not here. Not here in Milton Keynes. Let's see if I can find that spot that I meant. What is actually a nice touch is that the elevators are working now. Or at least some of them. This one apparently not.
Doors closing. Footbridge. Doors opening. Lift going down.
Yeah, thank you for that. Ah, you need to be close enough to use the lifts.
Doors opening. Lift going down. Doors closing.
Cannot call the attendants though.
Platform. Doors opening. Lift going up.
Alright. This was the last thing where I had to actually express my appreciation. Not everything in this route is good. Overall, it is a nice route anyway, and it has a new safety system that is implemented with the TASS system, even though the Euro balises are not in the tracks. By the way, Spectre says it still says train symbol 4 in the bottom right corner of the stream. Oh yeah, that is correct. I actually I wrote it anew, but I miscounted. With the quick succession of the game versions, you can get confused easily. Thank you for pointing this out. Now it is train sim world 5, I think. Let's put it where you can see it more easily. Train sim world 5, yes. Obviously, train sim world 4 cannot run a train sim world 5 core route. Guys, thank you for staying with me and bearing with me, even though it is already quite late in the evening. And I wish you a wonderful week. Take care and see you soon.